This was my father. From the time I was born, I was part of a family where child sexual abuse and trafficking and ritual abuse occurred. A typical experience for me would be being woken up, taken out of my bed and pulled down to the van where my father would roughly throw me in. There I would be taken to the group that would perform the abuse and the satanic ritual abuse. So this is a group well known across the world, Freemasons. They would, I was trafficked to them as well, and sometimes as a group and sometimes as individuals. And these were men who my father got to know very well over time, but he would take me in to their meeting, and then we would go into the antechamber, and there would be other children, and we would be lined up. There would be a nurse in one part of that chamber and a doctor would be alongside. The nurse would check us and the doctor would administer an injection. This was some form of barbiturate. I don't know what it was, but it made us children malleable and less anxious. Then we would be taken into the main chamber, and there we would be laid out in a ritualistic format, like a compass with points on it, and then the chanting would begin. So that was a typical example for me. That was a very common occurrence once a month at the Freemasons, and then other times throughout the year at specific events they would hold. So that would be more likely to be rural or out in the country. So a typical ritualistic event from when I was younger, under 10, was to have animals in there that were killed. So one example was there was a little lamb in there that had its throat cut, and we were required to not just put our hands into the blood and do some sort of symbolic sign onto others, so onto other children that they would then do onto me, but we were also required to drink it. During those ritualistic experiences and sessions, there were children that would be discussed as needing to be sacrificed. Now, for a lot of years, I didn't remember that particular experience, but I do now because my name was mentioned. And for me, I was beyond terrified, because what that would mean is if they were going to sacrifice me, it wasn't going to be done in a simple way. It would be, I would be knifed, dissected, and then passed around. So I think for me, what happened was my father was talking to the Grand Master, who was the lead in all of this, the top Freemason there. And I think I was too old. I remember hearing the words, "She's too old." And so they got a boy who was a little bit younger than me, and he was sacrificed instead. And then I think that was all I could remember, but I'll never forget. It was nearly me. Okay, so where I experienced all of this was Freemasons have lodges throughout the world, but in our country, and they're quite recognizable because the windows are all covered up, and it's almost like secrets are being held. And yes, they definitely are being held, but the ritualistic abuse would take place within those walls. Equally, when there was a celebration, so I'm thinking of May Day, for instance, there would be a big gathering from across New Zealand, and there would be many, many, many people there, and loads of children would be brought in, including me. And I remember a big long driveway. It was out in West Auckland, and it was in the country, and it was a massive big long driveway, and at the end were cop cars. And in those days back in New Zealand, it was black and white paddy wagons, so black and white cars were our New Zealand police. Now, whether or not they were involved or whether they were guarding the property, they were complicit in the satanic ritual abuse. Remember, we were heavily drugged and sedated. It was part of the ritual, actually, to drug children. I believe it wasn't just the drugging. I believe there was mind control. And when I say that, I'm talking about the chanting that would occur. So there was a lot of chanting which tended to be hypnotic and also auto-suggestible. So I think there was a lot of that as well. And I know there was incredible dissociation for me personally during those events, because I would wake sometime later back in my bed and know things had happened but couldn't quite remember what they were. So it's taken decades to understand the control they had through mind control, but also through drugs and also fear. You know, children are vulnerable. They are such easy pickings for these evil people. It was one night I tried to save a little boy. He was crying and he was really distraught, and I knew he was calling attention to himself and that they would not hesitate to sacrifice him. So I tried to talk to him and tried to calm him down and told him a nursery rhyme or a song. I can't quite remember which. But as a result of that, my punishment, when I got home, the dog's head was cut off, and I had to sleep on the pillow with the dog's head. So that ensured I never did anything again. I think the worst experience was one I've spoken to, which was that younger child. Instead of me being sacrificed, he was. And I remember it. I'll never forget it, because yes, my life was saved, but his was taken. So that's something that stays with you. That doesn't go away easily. Yeah, look, beautiful people watching. You know, if you're watching this, you're interested and you possibly already believe what you've been hearing. The reality is the silence and the cover-up and the absolute refusal of good people to accept that this evil exists means one thing and one thing only, and that is that it will continue to. So please, you've got great people in this project who are speaking out, and we just want to stop this. So that's my message. Thank you so much for watching.